ですね。これからよろしくね、先輩。
Master of four elements, the great sage Ygret. From childhood, he had no friends or family but was loved by spirits for his bright and pure soul. As an adult, he possessed power that stopped people from doing as they pleased with him, but even with that power he spent his life quietly with the spirits. In his final moments, he doesn't regret living with spirits but wonders what he had been living for. As he is wondering, spirits tell him it's okay and acclaim him that he was the best human they have met, and was a special person to them. He thanks them and tells them that these thoughts are inevitable at the final moment of one's life. He begins coughing blood. As a great sage, he was used to seeing death, but he couldn't do anything about feeling regret when it comes to himself. At a certain point, he was surrounded by people but they all wanted to take advantage and weren't close to him. After many betrayals, he realized he was looking for something he couldn't hope to have. Life given by God was fair, and if he had something he couldn't have the others. He calls himself stupid and the spirit around him refutes him as he takes his last breath. Spirit tells him to sleep and no matter where his soul goes they will be by his side. In Ruba Academy, maid begins to talk about someone outside saying his body itself was weak or he might be acting to get out of class. As they discuss his weak physique and how they can't even understand what he is thinking, one of the maids says he wasn't quiet since the beginning but has started 2 days ago and no one had visited him, saying there was a reason he was called Ygret Prince. As the other maid tells her to quiet down, the maid doesn't stop saying it was just them and laughs as the silver hair that symbolizes the royal family made the nickname perfect. Inside, the white-haired prince begins checking his body and wonders where he was. The maids walk in hearing a noise, call the prince, and ask if he is alright. Understanding the situation, he apologized for startling them and told them he was fine and they could leave. Ygret in the body of Judas says feels like a ghost and calls a spirit to ask what had happened. Spirit of Wind Uni appears and asks if he still remembers her. He asks if she still remembers him and she replies she does and kisses him on the cheek and thanks him for calling. She asked what she could do for her with a smile on her face. Judas Rovarzan Archidon, the firstborn of the Liberjan Empire, was born with silver hair that symbolized royalty. People were interested due to his physique befitting royalty but also because he seemed to have been born with the proper virtues of a prince. Despite their expectation, he couldn't answer nor show what he had learned. Born with a weak body, people around him were worried, and after he turned 7 he stopped growing. Even when he was old enough to be crowned prince, due to his small body, nobles began to lose interest and disappear. King worried sent him to Ruvarach Academy, which provided education for noble and royalty, helping them shine brighter by developing their talent. This was the last thing he could do for his eldest son. Ygret thanks her for the explanation. He asks if the child was abused as he reveals his arm, which looks very thin, and Uni says he was bullied by the kids his age. He frowns as he experiences the same things when he is young. He pats his own head, telling the body it must have been tough for a young child to live such a hard life. He wonders what he should do but denies Uni's suggestion of concern for the body's owner's feelings. Uni is upset with his habit of putting others above him and tells him to think about himself more. She says she would be by his side no matter what life he lived, and he thanks her. As they walk outside and talk to each other, Uni wonders if she should keep Yurt's return a secret from others, happy about her alone time with him. Ygret notices a black-haired student who is looking at a book and walks up to him. The boy is surprised by the sudden appearance of Ygret as he hadn't felt his presence. The black hair said it was his first time here, and Ygret said it was for him too, and say he talked to him as they both had the same clothes. Noticing his hair and eyes, he deducts that he must be the first prince, but is bewildered as he doesn't look like the rumor told. They introduce themselves and Eden is surprised that Judas knows the ancient word, listening to him saying the meaning of his name. He says he was searching for the Academy's office and Ygret points him to the path. He thanks him and Ygret walks away and says let's meet again with a smile. Eden, who sees that, thinks the rumor about the prince might have been wrong. Ygret reaches the class exhausted, but the class has already ended. The teacher warns him and ends the class. As Ygret is fascinated looking at the students, someone calls him in a sarcastic tone with a smirk on his face. Uni is enraged looking at the attitude. Ygret, not noticing the tone, replies with a bright smile and asks for his name. He introduces himself as Vikel, confused about the situation. In the past, he got his nickname for being a prince who didn't possess the sobriety nor aura royal. Vikel, looking at him, wonders if it really was the Ygret prince. Other classmates are also surprised to see him smile and begin to gossip as he leaves the class. A group of girls begin to call him creepy and begin badmouthing him. A girl who seems like the leader of the group asks Christina for her opinion, but she just walks away saying she isn't interested in childish gossip and warns her to not talk curly before her. In a practical class, Yurt tries to follow the staff-wielding lesson but due to his weak body can't do it and looks at his palm and notices the body has been forcing himself to learn the staff. He wonders if he should complete the body's dream or stop when the teacher calls and begins talking to him. She doesn't expect any reply but is stunned seeing him reply happily with a smile. She takes a stance and begins teaching him about staff wielding. The teacher tells everyone to pair up for sparring. Yurt, who is left over, notices Eden and asks if he found the place. After light talk, he asks him to be his partner in class and he agrees, thinking he is different than in rumor. The teacher who is watching leaks that Eden is from the Hagar family, which the students hear saying one of the two major families in the empire along with the Delphia family. All the other students begin talking about the Hagar family and wonders if it's alright for the two of them to spar, but it's fine for Duke's son and Prince to spar, saying they make a good pair. In one exchange, Ygret's staff drops with bruises on his palm. Uni is a bit angry seeing him hurt, but he calms her down saying he was fine and it didn't hurt badly. The teacher tells him to stop practicing and sit as she gets him an ice pack, not noticing he was talking to a spirit. The teacher asked why he had taken her class as he seemed to have experience with martial arts. Eden replied he wanted to get the sense of handling weapons and hone his swordsmanship more. Notices his stance. The teacher is impressed with Eden. Looking at his hand filled with a callus, she is satisfied, saying that is what she expected from the Hagar family. The teacher begins sparring and is impressed seeing him hold on to the staff even though the exchange must have hurt. She says there is a difference between staff wielding and sword wielding and compliments him for not losing his grip. Other students are talking to him surrounding him as Ygret is left behind. Looking at the atmosphere, he walks away as he murmurs that nothing changed. Uni asks about it but he smiles it off saying he is fine. Uni notices and asks what's wrong and he replies even with kids all around him nobody had approached him. He was hoping to get along using Judas's body but nothing had changed. Uni says it was because they didn't know him and he admits it would take time to make others let their guard down. Seeing him upset, Uni grabs him by the nose and tells one they know about him they would definitely like him and he thanks her. Vikel and other classmates noticed his change. He tried to mock him and berate him but he always handled it in a calm manner. He kept talking to Vikel and other students without avoiding them. Some responded to him while others ignored him. Even in staff-wielding class, he began to him as all, though the difference wasn't much. Annoyed with the way he talked, why he was acting so friendly with everyone as they would like it even if he did it, and asked if he was regretting the past. Ygret admits that he was regretting the past. He had given up on everything before but this time he wouldn't give up and keep trying till the end. Looking at his change, Vikel accepts he might never know the reason for the change but he wouldn't get in the way of his effort and tells him to do as he pleases. But the effort he put in didn't seem to have much result as he looked at the paint can on the ground as he was covered in it. A student who pushing a trolley filled with medicine lightly hits Ygret, spilling them on the floor. The student is worried looking at the spill when Ygret offers his hand and asks if she is hurt. The student says she is fine and apologizes with tears in her eyes. Looking at her tearing up, he apologizes for surprising her holding her trembling hand. He notices the spilled medicine and asks if she is making something. She replies she is making healing food and could remake the spilled ones. Noticing the ingredients, he asked if she was researching poisonous medical ingredients. She was surprised to learn that he was knowledgeable about medicine, but he seemed puzzled when he looked at her. Uni explained about healing food and advised her to add Sidhan as the ingredients were strong. Understanding, she got excited to test it and walked away saying thanks. The next day, Vikel, who was talking to him, notices that he seems sick but isn't sure what to do. Yurt notices the book he was reading and asks who the person he respected most was. Uni and Yurt turn silent when he says Yurt's name. When asked why, Vikel begins telling why he is an amazing person. Uni is ecstatic to hear that while Yurt feels embarrassed. In the staff-wielding class, he faints as Eden says he was holding it back from the beginning to the teacher. Mayran signs and tells him to take him to the clinic. In the clinic, Yurt noticed the student he met the day before as she remembered him as well. She thanked him for his suggestions, saying she succeeded after multiple attempts. The doctor checked him and made him rest after giving him medicine and asked Rihanna to bring 3 days worth of medicine. The doctor began asking him questions but he said he was fine and was feeling better now. Doctor says almost all his body function has stopped and he shouldn't push himself. Eden hears that but stays silent when Rihanna comes in with medicine. She asks for his arm and uses her power and pink light shines, which represents healing power. Feeling refreshed, he grabbed her shoulder, thanked her and said he would return to class. Yet thanks Eden, who says he did his role as partner. He says he will strengthen his power to be his training partner. Eden reminds him to not push himself and he says he is not saying it was just effort. Back in class, teacher gave him a package telling him to read it as the train was too much for him. He noticed the mail was from the Vatican and opened it to find an invitation to get his baptismal name. The Vatican Elysium was a place which held the same authority as the palace. They would give a baptismal name which would be used between their real name. The ceremony itself didn't take long, but the distance between the place took about 10 days. Another student complains about the ceremony and he looks at the letter asking for a team of 3. At night he asks Yuni how long he had in the child's body and until what point can he act as he wants. Yuni says she didn't know and asks if he wants to get the baptismal name and he nods. He didn't have that before and wanted to leave behind proof that he existed, calling it a selfish wish. Yuni tells him to do what he wants as he might have to live in the body forever. He calls it a shame as the body owner wanted to do a lot of things and he was stealing it away. Agitated, he tells him to not worry about that his current owner's body was him and he should sleep if he is worried. He had his first dream after he came into Judah's body. He was slapped and the woman broke a vase and grabbed a shard ready to attack him when he woke up with an earthquake. Feeling the earthquake, Yuni asks if Ygret is okay. Ygret, who had unconsciously used his power due to the nightmare, removes the blanket to notice Earth spirit Tony, who is crying. He hugs him in tears, saying he was waiting for him to call him, worried he might have forgotten about him. He calmed him down, saying he would never forget him and they would be friends even if he was dead. He asked if everyone felt his existence and Yuni admitted that they had, but they couldn't come to him unless he called them. Tony, who keeps staring at her, says he was worried as he hadn't seen her for a while. She says she was okay and was with Yurt before him and begins teasing him. Seeing them fight, Yurt tells them to not fight. He tells them that he didn't call them because he knew they wouldn't leave his side once he called them. She kisses him and says they are happiest beside him as he feels relief to have someone he can trust. On the day of departure, he meets Eden, who hadn't expected him to sign up as well due to his weak body. Ygret says not taking given chance was troublesome and asks if it was silly. Eden says that wasn't what he meant, saying he looked strong. He thinks that he is different than he looked and if he recovered his health he would be great as the first prince. As they wait for the last member, Team Eden begins to complain while Yurt tries to mediate when Christina arrives, calling Eden rude. Annoyed, Eden keeps complaining but she doesn't back down. While they glare at each other, Yurt stands in the middle trying to mediate. Yurt calls her in a calm voice, saying they had been waiting for a while and she should apologize earnestly. After a moment she apologizes and both let the matter rest. Yurt believes that the academy was trying to establish the faction by placing both the dukes with the prince and the intentions of the current emperor might also be involved. The staff in the portal begins to explain the process and tells them their next destination. At the destination, the staff tells their portal schedule for the next day and are free till then. Christina moves away, saying they don't have to stay together, and Eden tells her to be on time the next day in an annoyed tone while Yurt wishes her good day with a smile. Yurt tries to Eden talk but notices that he is tense. He says that it was his first time outside without escort. He told him that he wasn't alone, but he thought that was more concerning. The next day they go out for a trip after hearing Tony's request. Outside they notice Vikel, who seems to visiting places in disguise while looking tense. He tries to follow, having a bad feeling about it, until a fortune teller calls him. Yuni tells him to try, so he goes to the granny. She says her telling was famous for accuracy, but he says he isn't interested in it. Noticing his expression, she said he wasn't a normal person and told him to pick a card and that she won't charge him. She picks up the card he picked to find them being sun, deer, and swords. She told him what each card meant and he admitted to himself, though they were vague, there was some truth to them. She said his position was of sun and there would be people coming for his head. He needed to keep people around him close so they wouldn't be hurt, and depending on how he used them they might be of big help or they might stab him in the back. She notices he has traces of royalty but doesn't see a bright future and thinks it was a waste to eat the candy he had offered. Yuni, mad at the fortune teller, begins complaining loudly while Tony tries to calm her down. Yurt tells them to stop fighting and that he doesn't believe in the fortune teller, so it doesn't matter, saying he wanted to live his life to the fullest, and had both of them as they hugged him. After 3 days of traveling, they reach their destination, and a glasses guy greets them and tells them to follow him. After reaching a room he tells them to wait. Even after 3 days of travel, Eden and Christina's relationship had not improved as they turned away from each other. Eden notices the wolf as everyone is waiting in the room. He hadn't brought his sword, making the situation dangerous if it decided to attack. A woman in a black veil assures the students the wolf, called HEV, is nice as she soothes it and introduces herself as a saint. Saints' existence was different than humans and lived without leaving the Vatican alongside their guardian dog, passing away after handing their name to the next generation. The student greets her with a slight bow. She replies and asks where the third person was. Eden had heard a rumor about Saint being born blind and had missed Judas due to his thin presence. Yurt walks forward and introduces himself, and Saint, finally noticing his presence, holds his cheeks, saying he has a warm and strong soul. She informed the naming ceremony would be held on feast days and were waiting for people to arrive. She said she would call them within a day and to wait a bit longer. Christina was annoyed hearing they had to wait for more, as Eden said that the academy must have given the time limit, taking the wait into account. They begin arguing again. Christina tries to walk out but Eden grabs her saying she might miss the call. She tries to argue back but stops after Yurt starts explaining in a calm tone and tells if she still wants to go out they could go out together. She gives up going out but asks him what they should do to make the time meaningful. As he tries to come up with something she falls into her thoughts. She had seen a prince before who was pitiful existence unfit to be ruler change and wondered why she couldn't have misjudged thinking he must be hiding something. She asked him what he was hiding straight and he frowned being asked that as he could tell them everything. A power greater than necessary always led to a mishap so he decided to show them just a bit. Hiding his power he shows his wind element power while calling it an unnecessary skill impressing both while Uni just snorts calling them stupid. Christina blurs out how hard it is to find people with spirit connections and Eden asks why he is hiding it. He says power comes with responsibility and he couldn't take responsibility for it. Hearing Christina he admits he was avoiding it. When Eden says that evading will not solve the problem, Yurt replies that he wasn't the type who needed a high position and wasn't fit for it, and he asks them to keep it a secret. When questioned if it was meaningful, she replies it was in some manner, albeit reluctantly. He enters last as the saint asks for his hand as it is hard for her to pick his presence. At this location the priest begins praying and tells him to put his right hand in water which would make the name appear. As the name Yurt appears in the water he realizes the name wasn't for the body. Noticing him down Uni asks what happened, and he tells her that the baptismal name was Yurt thinking he got that name due to his greed. He would have to leave the body if the owner ever came back but as more time is more, it felt like the child wouldn't have any place to return. The spirits try to console him. Outside the saint notices his return and offers to show him to his room. He said that he was late because his thoughts had been messy, and the saint replied that it was alright because her thoughts did as well from time to time. He asked whether the saint had any worries, and she said that she had, as she was curious about what the outside world looked like and why she was different from others. Especially when someone close passes away and she doesn't know what to do and she prays till that person disappears from her thoughts. With 200 years left, she doesn't know how many times she will have to face it again. She apologized for rambling on but Yurt held his hand and telling her everyone feared being left alone and crying when someone close leaves her was also normal. Even if she was more special than others she was still a human so she could just cry. His words leave a mark on her as he asks to be her friend for the remaining 200 years. The saint agrees and he thanks her as they both smile at each other. The next day Yurt meets the other two outside. They inform them that the portal is broken, and Yurt, understanding that someone must have broken it on purpose, asks Uni to find out. Tony and Uni begin to fight and after someone returns to tell a magician had entered last night and cracked it. The saint calms down the student and after the student leaves Yurt walks up to the saint and asks for details of the situation. With the conversation, she noticed that Yurt had understood that someone had done it on purpose and confirmed it saying no intruders were found and alarm magic was dispelled before it could be activated. She said they had been searching culprit since morning but with not trace. It was difficult saying she felt like the culprit had the great sage's power. Christina deduces that the culprit must have a reason to do so if they have power close to great sage, and Eden agrees, adding it must be to keep someone in as they both glance at Yurt who has a confused look. With an exasperated face, she says it must be him and Eden tells him to be extra careful. Yurt says it was possible and thanks them for their concern. He says he hopes the target was him making both turn toward him as adds that it would be easier that way. He wonders what they were after him who can't do anything properly, as he didn't have any power, and tells them to be careful. Eden is surprised by how relaxed he looks even while wishing to be a target and talking about his weakness, and Christine wonders if the weak-looking ygret prince was made on purpose. He says he plans to leave bait before anyone gets hurt and asks for their help. He says that he can easily find the person with spirit but capture would be hard with his body. He tells them he will be bait and meet them. Others tries to dissuade him but smiles saying he wants to do everything he can to help. Asks the spirit to lead as Eden and Christine follow him to an old church. Eden immediately takes out his sword at a suspiciously hooded person as Christine questions him. The person removed the hood to reveal it was Vikel and Yurt told him to put the sword away to tell how Vikel was. He asks why they were there and Christine replies they were there for baptismal name and asks why he was there. He says it was to meet someone and explain the situation. It was normal to approach talented students early but Yurt wonder why was it in an isolated place. He tells them to leave but Eden refuses saying they are going to search the place. Looking at the flustered reaction, Christine asks if the person is someone they weren't supposed to meet when a voice is heard. As the voice speaks, Uni confirms the person was responsible for the portal damage and Yurt feels like he recognized the voice and aura. The person takes off his hood and yet recognizes him immediately as Fried Gulliano. He asks Vikel if he brought the other but Vikel denies it. Ygret is still processing what he learned and decides to ask for his name. Fried looks at him with a smirk while replying in a sarcastic tone. He answers that his name was freed and his last name was thrown away. He asks why the students were there but gets annoyed when they remain silent, telling them to leave if they aren't answering. Ygret asks why he destroyed the portal and he starts laughing. He confesses that he had done it but refuses to tell the reason. He said he did care if they called him a criminal and asked if they were curious about anything else. He turned around and walked away, bidding them farewell. Christine begins interrogating Vikel, asking if he was an accomplice. He tells them that he had communicated through letter till then. Recognized by family as being par with Ygret, he was interested so had asked to meet him. She keeps asking questions while he replies to everyone. Christine asks Judas to leave and tell Saint but notices he is missing. He had followed Fried, who asks if he has any question. Ygret demands the reason for destroying the portal as he surrounds him with spirit energy. Fried notices the energy, calling it an annoying ability, and he takes out a bottle that contains a spirit stone, saying he had taken it out when he broke portal. Spirit stone was used in the portal to lessen the burden on the portal and users themselves. The only person who could create it was Ygret. Fried tells him he had to get other ingredients, and Ygret interjects what else was he trying to do, but Fried is surprised by the fact he knew what he stole. He always had an interest in people with special qualities but was extremely cynical. His expectations of him had grown a lot as well until they ended in catastrophe. He tells him that he was interested but had a job to do and threatens him to get lost if didn't want to die. Seeing him not moving, he calls out Asadam. Ygret feels a dark energy and realizes he is using necromancy as a skeleton appears. He says that necromancy was forbidden in every country, but Fried just smiles, calling it a sweet word, and says he feels satisfaction breaking rules. Ygret asks how many souls were used to call Sodom. He replies he hadn't thought of counting, showing no remorse or disgust. Ygret asks if he really had to get power with such a cruel means. Fried stares at his frowns and makes the skeleton attack him, calling him annoying just like Ygret. He easily defends against the attack, but Fried keeps talking and says he was saying words like Ygret would, though it would be a waste of talent, he would kill him because he offended him while calling Gamora a dog undead. Uni and Tony, not like Fried, begin attacking and easily incapacitate his summons. Fried smiles, finding a kid who can use 2 elements and stop his summons even if they were weakened. He felt Judas's talent was comparable to Ygret's when HEV bites the dog summon as the saint walks in, telling him violence was prohibited, charging him with the crime of using the devil's magic and damaging the Vatican's portal. She tells him to surrender, but he refuses, claiming that there is no salvation in the world. The church people are offended by his statement when an earthquake occurs and the undead dragon is summoned. He climbs the dragon and flies away, but the saint catches it charging its breath and tells everyone to cast protective spells. As she regrets underestimating the necromancer and is worried about not being able to cast protection magic strong enough to protect everyone, Uni comes forward, buying the saint time. Saint realizes the spirit is buying time and begins casting. Fried, who was able to sense the spirit's strength before Saint finished the protective spell, is interested but decides to stop and flies away, promising to play with the prince again. The saint leans on have exhausted, which Ygret notices. He turns to see Eden and Christine, who ask whether he is harmed. He pretends to be alright and apologizes for the sudden disturbance. He tells them to go back and rest, and both Eden and Christine notice an instant gloomy feeling even though he acted okay instantly.
For more amazing videos, please like, share, and subscribe to support this channel.